please be noted that the information provided in this module does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. All available information and content are for general information purpose only. Wisconsin cottage food laws allow for the selling of some types of foods made from home in the state of Wisconsin with certain restrictions. Through this module, you will have a basic understanding regarding which foods are exempt from licensure and are covered by the cottage food laws in the state of Wisconsin. In addition to that, we need to keep in mind that regulations and laws are updated periodically, and you always want to check if there is any new information. Therefore, knowing where to find information about the laws and food safety and keeping up to date with new regulations is essential. Based on current laws in Wisconsin, selling of 2 types of homemade food items in Wisconsin without licensure is allowed. The 2009 Wisconsin Act 101, which is commonly called Pickle Bill, regulates the sale of certain types of homemade canned foods, such as jams, jellies, pickle items, sauces, and other addictive goods. Home bakers are also allowed to sell homemade baked goods, such as bread, cookies, crackers, pasta, and pies without licensure. However, for those who want to sell any of those homemade food products, there are some detailed points they want to pay attention to. As stated in 2009 Wisconsin Act 101, there are a few requirements people need to follow if they want to sell home canned foods without licensure. Canning, especially home canning, can be a risky process due to the risk of Clostridium botulinum contamination. And when the canned food has a pH below 4.6, Clostridium botulinum will not be a concern. Therefore, the pH value of the product must be less or equal to 4.6. Also, the seller can only sell the food products at a community or social events or a farmer's market in this state and receive less than $5,000 per year from the sale of the food products. The seller must also have a sign stating these canned foods are homemade and not subject to state inspection. For the containers of canned foods, there are certain items that must be labeled on them. It must contain the name and address of the person who prepared the food. It also must say, this product was made in a private home not subject to state licensing or inspection. It also must have a list of ingredients and a notice if the product contains any of the top 8 allergens: milk, eggs, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, wheat, peanuts, and soybeans. Home sellers are also encouraged to go through training. In cooperation with the University of Wisconsin Extension, the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection will attempt to make information and services available on how to properly prepare low-acid and acidified home canned food products. To sell homemade baked foods, unlicensed home bakers also need to pay attention to certain points. First of all, based on the definition of bakery from current Wisconsin Administrative Code, baked goods are bread, cookies, crackers, pasta, or pies, or any other food products for which flour or ground meal is the principal ingredient. The licensing exemption only applies to people baking out of their home. So, for example, if someone makes baked goods in a bakery, manufacturer, or processing plant and wants to sell them, the person still needs a license to do that. Also, only baked goods that are not potentially hazardous can be sold. In Wisconsin Statute 97, potentially hazardous food means any food that can support rapid and progressive growth of infectious or toxicogenic microorganisms, growth and toxin production of Clostridium botulinum, and in raw shell eggs, growth of Salmonella enteritidis. Hazardous foods would require temperature control and need to be refrigerated. Although inspections are not required in this state, basic sanitation practices should be considered. For example, it is important to clean and sanitize equipment prior to use. Clean and sanitize food contact surfaces, hand washing, keep domestic animals out of kitchen, and keep kitchen and work area clean. These practices help prevent foodborne pathogen contamination. Because Wisconsin cottage laws do not require training for sellers of homemade products, it is useful for producers to educate themselves on the laws and basic safety practices surrounding canning and baking. These are a few websites that have useful information.